I've always been the person who I don't care if I'm going to fail. We're all going to fail so many more times in life than we're going to win, but no one's going to remember our failures except for us. And I am way more afraid of getting to the end and asking the question, what if I had
Mm.
done something, than freaking just jumping out of the plane and saying, oh, I do like skydiving. Let's do it again.
Most people don't realize that the towns we live in, the shops we visit, the gathering spaces we love, the housing we need, are all built by someone who decided to take action. Today's guest, Kristi Kandel, is on a mission to make sure that someone is you. And with nearly 20 years of experience and over $450 million in development projects, ranging from retail rollouts across California to clean energy infrastructure, Kristi's learned that the process of building a community isn't reserved for big corporations or Ivy League grads. It's for local. And in this episode, we dig into how she went from working a sign company job to managing 30 development projects a year in her 20s, how she turned that experience into her own thriving firm, and why she's now focused on breaking down the barriers that keep regular people from building their towns. If you've ever looked at vacant lots or rundown buildings and thought, someone should do something about that, this episode will show you how. And if you're looking for the simplest, most profitable way to start building cash flow with minimal overhead and maximum returns, land flipping is still the best kept secret in real estate. You can learn exactly how we do it inside our Flipping Dirt coaching program at flippingdirt.us. Let's get into it with Kristi Kandel. Kristi Kandel, welcome to the podcast. We're excited to have you on today and talk land and development and all things.
Yes, welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, this will be fun. So as we were talking about before hitting record here, we haven't really discussed development in any, other than single family homes or maybe some build to rent communities and things like that. But I think this is a good topic that we all see in our landscape, but maybe don't even understand a fraction of what goes into getting dirt into, a business or a community or something like that. So this will be good. Why don't we just start with a bit of an overview and give us a rundown of, some of the highlights of your personal life and some of your work background and that kind of stuff.
Sure. So I grew up in Ohio in a very small town, less than 2,500 people. And I knew very quickly, I'm like, wait, there is a big world out there that I want to explore. So I ended up picking Florida after college to go down and start at. And I got a job at a sign company and they were putting up signs for CVS Pharmacy. And so I got to work with all the developers and through showing up to the job sites, I'm like, wait, they're literally building this building and the shopping center behind it and the condos behind it and the townhomes. I'm like, wow, I never even thought about how these structures came to be. I never thought about how our communities were formed. So one day I looked up at one of the developers in the field. I'm like, hey, Eric, what's it take to be a developer? And I'm thinking he's going to tell me, go to school, get this degree, spend years doing XYZ. And they were a small group out of Tampa. And he's like, for us, if you're the right person, we'll teach you. We're a small enough company. We just want to make sure you're the right culture fit. I was like, great. When are you hiring me? Because I had already worked with them as the sign company and they got to see my work ethic. So I'm like, let's go. Like, come on. So I did end up a couple weeks later joining their company and they got the opportunity. It was back in 2009. And so right in the heat of the real estate crash,
Mhm.
and Family Dollar was like, oh, this could be a great opportunity for us to expand to California. So we had done their development in Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. And they're like, do you guys want to do this for us in California? And our company was game for it. And I told him, I said, hey, wait, I'm the only one without a spouse and multiple kids. I should probably be the one to go open the office. Let's make sure this works. And then y'all can move your families out. Somehow that worked. And in 2010, I ended up relocating to Orange County, California, and opening our office. And for the next 4 years, from San Francisco to San Diego, I was developing 30 Family Dollars a year. So from the time the real estate guys got the dirt under contract, I was coming into the cities, doing the due diligence, finding and vetting the architects and engineers and the whole design team, going through entitlements, presenting at the planning commissions and city councils, doing the permitting, and even doing the construction management.
Wow,
So I'm like in my early to mid 20s doing all that, working with people 20 to 30 years older with tons of experience. And I really tried to be as big of a sponge as possible because I just knew, I'm like, this is an opportunity that most people don't get. I knew California just had so many more opportunities than other places. And I just wanted to be a sponge, not knowing where it would lead me, but hey, let's give this a try. And then having some great mentors along the way between my civil engineers and contractors. And I honestly, it was one day, Vasanti looked at me, one of my consultants, and she's like, Kristi, you've gotten the experience of someone who's had a 30-year career in the past 4 years. The entrepreneur in me lit up. I'm like, wait, are you serious? Okay, how do I use this? But then, like most people, then imposter syndrome sinks in and you go, yeah, but this is just single tenant, 2-acre developments. I know it's in California. I know I've worked with hundreds of cities, but what about shopping centers? What about industrial? What about multifamily? Got to be harder and more difficult. There's got to be so much more to learn. I started working with a developer in Newport Beach who did all that. And it took me all of 3 months to realize it's the same steps and it's the same process. You just have to know how to ask the right questions up front to outline that specific project, how to build the right team. And it doesn't matter if it's a $1 million project or, a $50 million project. Mm. So then in 2015, I started my company. And then that was development and consulting, because development projects take a long time. And out west, they're 3 to 5 years at least before you see money. So I created a whole consulting division, also created a dry utility division, because to get power, gas, and telecom out west, it's just as much as entitling and permitting. And then started taking some of the money from that and investing into my own deals, and then also into smaller multifamily value add. And so got a combination of short-term, mid-term, long-term rentals, property management for those. So basically I'm a serial business owner, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. Let's create this cash flow revenue. Let's create this. And then to me, even though I'm heavily invested in real estate, that helps mitigate the risk if one asset class or something were to go sideways. So
yeah, that diversification. Okay, well, thanks for the rundown. I mean, there's so many threads I want to pull on in there. So when you transitioned from Florida to California to go, launch a bunch of Family Dollar stores, what kind of support network did you have in place? Like, were you a solo employee going out there and just finding consultants, or you had people at the home office helping, or kind of what was that growth curve like for you?
It was a heck of a curve. One thing I will say, the company that I went out with, what they had dialed was their systems and processes and how they dealt with development projects. So I at least had all of that stuff dialed in. But they had that, yes. They had the playbook, and, at that point I was probably only 4 months in, but I would, prior to being the one who went out there, I would work on the East Coast projects during the day and absorb as much as possible. And then I would stay and keep working, and I would work with the guys who were doing the due diligence out west and really absorb and get that information. And to me, it kind of helped because nobody at my company had all the answers on California. So it didn't matter who was going out there. You just had to be really good at asking questions and being a detective and trying to figure it out. Ultimately, I probably got half a person in Florida who was my support team, and it was ridiculous, like 60 to 80-hour weeks. I just refused to fail, and I'm going to keep going and trying. And I would ask for help for someone with more experience if I just hit a roadblock. But it was a little bit of insanity. I do remember I was at a public hearing in San Joaquin where the mayor stops the meeting and she says, Kristi, where are you going to be staying tonight? Because she knew the closest hotel was an hour away and they were doing their annual police report. I was like, oh, I'm actually driving down to Fontana because I have a director's advisory meeting in the morning. So I'm going to head down there after. That was a 5-hour drive away. So she stops the meeting. It's like 5, 6 o'clock at night. She's like, hold on. We need to get Miss Kandel and her Family Dollar on the agenda and approved so she can get on the road. Like, oh, like that was cool. But also like, guys, this is a bad look.
Yeah.
But then also understanding, like everyone asks, how do I find a mentor? You will find a mentor if you are taking action. I think, and you guys know in the community, so many people say they're interested and they want to learn something. Very, very, very few people will take action. So if you take action and you show progress, people are going to pour into you willingly. So thankfully, I had a civil engineer who was a guru at navigating entitlements in California. And he just took me under his wing and I watched the magic happen. They built all the Home Depots and tons of other big projects. And just really learned from him. And then I also had a contractor who, because I'm managing anywhere from 12 to 20 projects a year. And I'm learning from him how to speak the contractor language, to work with his team, to have accountability, but not to be so demanding or like in the tone, and how to communicate with these older guys. And So all of that, I'm grateful, and just being a sponge and being willing to say, "Oh, okay, you're right. I was wrong. I totally wrong approach on my end," or "Oh, I had no idea." I'm willing to take feedback.
Yeah.
Of course, I couldn't help not to hear throughout your stories that how important it is for you to say that, express the fact that you are such a sponge and you wanted to learn and you refused to fail. And for you, there was just not an option not to go forward and learn. And I think that's a quality that many people lack. It's so tempting to give up when we meet obstacles
Mhm.
or hard. And it's very inspiring to hear that attitude and mindset.
Yeah, I'll echo that. And I actually was a question I wanted to back up a little bit and understand, where did that grit come from for you? Like, did you have role models, parents? Were you pushed hard, like in school as the achiever, or kind of how did that fortitude kind of get there for you?
A little bit of all of that.
Yeah.
I like to say, and so does my sister, we're recovering perfectionists, but we're the ones that take action though. And we were held to a very high standard growing up. And then also we in turn held ourselves to a really high standard because, we wanted to we wanted to be a good example for everyone around us. And at the same time, I grew up in a very small town, very poor in Ohio. And I remember every Wednesday night being budget night down to like the nickel. And I just was like, this is so, I could see how stressful that was. And my dad is the hardest worker, three jobs to, have a family of six. And I watched what he did. And so we learned the work ethic from that and then applied it to go, okay, well, how can we take this to the next level? How can we take the next step to move the family line forward and to just keep going? And then I've just always been the black sheep. I've always been the person who, I don't care if I'm going to fail. We're all going to fail so many more times in life than we're going to win, but no one's going to remember our failures except for us. And I am way more afraid of getting to the end and asking the question, what if I had
Mm.
done something, than freaking just jumping out of the plane and saying, oh, I do like skydiving. Let's do it again. Like, and if I don't, I'll course correct. So
Mm.
I'm just not as scared of taking risks because I've seen when you do push through, I've seen how great it can be.
Yeah. And conversely, how stressful and anxiety filled it can be as well when you're just, on the line, or you don't have
Yeah.
a safety net. But yeah, I love that philosophy. And it is, I think, to echo what you said and what you said. I mean, we coach several people, and yeah, I mean, you get a sense immediately who is there to play and who's there to achieve and who's going to wash out. I mean, it's just,
Yep.
it's not 100%, but you can usually tell pretty quickly those that are pushing through obstacles, they're go-getters, they're hustling. And yeah, those are the people that you want to mentor and coach, to your
Mhm.
point. So yeah, I love that. Well, okay, so we're in California. You're churning out. You're developing the whole state of California with big box retail facilities
Yep.
and stuff. And at some point, I know there's a transition in here. So kind of maybe walk us through, fast forward to where that happened and what the underlying tenets were.
Yeah, it was late 2014 where I started working with the developer in Newport Beach that was doing larger projects, and I knew I've always been an entrepreneur. I was always hustling, like whether it was taking the leaves in our yard as a kid and raking them into a bike path and charging the neighbors to ride it, or like it doesn't matter what it was, I was doing it. And when I realized that I had the experience to navigate it, and yet I was making someone else's dream come true. And
Mm.
I knew that with the golden handcuffs I had, that the longer I stayed, the less likely I would be to take a risk on myself. So I I looked at it as, hey, worst case, this is a 1 year sabbatical. I'll be recharged. I'll come back because it was a grind. And actually to back it up, I remember being in Manhattan Beach, California. So I also huge into beach volleyball and went semi-pro and was like so addicted to that, but there's no money in volleyball.
Sure.
But so we're on the beaches and our friends are, they're dating the millionaires and billionaires that live there. And so I held the Stanley Cup and you get all these opportunities of things. And I realized I'm like, nobody's happy. They literally have everything that I thought from small town Ohio would make me happy. They have the money, they have the fame. They don't have to worry about how they're going to put food on the table or pay the bills. And I'm like, and they're not happy. So maybe I'm climbing this corporate ladder to the wrong place. Maybe my ladder is the wrong destination. So I feel really grateful to have almost fast forwarded and seen, oh, this is where I'm going. If that's the outcome, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know what I was going for next. I just knew it no longer was that. So that was really the extra catalyst and motivation to go, let me give myself a shot. I have no idea what I'm going to make of this, but we'll try. We'll see. And I ended up doing some early consulting that by the time I looked at the end of year one, I remember looking back going, wait, I just replaced my 6-figure salary. I traveled, because I said every time I get a good sized contract, I'll take a vacation somewhere. I'm like, and I traveled to more places than I've ever been and had the freedom and flexibility. And I had just gotten connected with what would be a JV partnership to build hydrogen fueling stations in California. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, in year one, I well exceeded this 1-year sabbatical. This might be a real company. Okay, like, let's see what happens next.
Nice. Early wins. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So you had the idea, I guess, there when you were going to transition that you would do consulting, or you would still apply your knowledge base into consulting with other people. Did you have clients in mind, or how did you go about ramping your business?
I told a few people at the very end. What I knew is that I was lacking. Every developer that I had talked to was lacking a development project manager who actually knew what they were doing. There's plenty of people. I mean, we joke, but it's serious in the industry, and I'm talking the big, massive developers too. There's just so much money in the deals that it can happen, but 85% of them don't really know what they're doing. There's just much money in the deals, and they can get lucky just enough that they still make millions. I've just come in on so many deals where I see how much money was blown that didn't need to be blown if they had done the things in the right order. So
Just
I knew there was
things that, like, taking extra time, or not, getting things
like making sure you have water to your project before you're 3/4 of the way done with construction on
and all these things just delay the cash flow, or making
Yes.
money aspect of things. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I knew there was a big demand for it. And my pitch was going to be to them, hey, instead of hiring an in-house development project manager, just hire me. And then that way you're only paying on a per project basis. You're getting all of this expertise and you don't have the overhead. So I knew that concept should work. And then it was just a matter of, putting it into action. And then it was ironically through beach volleyball that I got introduced to one of the founders of the hydrogen company. And there was 2 professors from UCI. The third founder was from, I think it was GM. And they were trying to develop hydrogen fueling stations and leveraging grants and venture capital. And because of the venture capital they brought in, they were required to use a company called Black and Beach, who is enormous. I think their market cap is 30 billion, make like 4 to 5 billion a year in revenue. And they were hired to be their engineer and their development partner for the projects. You're only as good as the person on the team, and California is just a different beast. So they had 4 problem childs out of their first cycle that they couldn't figure out how to get permitted. So I came in, got those permitted for them, and then started building a relationship with them. And what I really geek out and nerd out on is business optimization and like getting systems in place. And so I just started helping them build their team to be like, no, ask them this. Like, they just gave you a sketch of a survey. They did not give you a full-blown Alta survey. Take this checklist, give it to them, ask them to do that, because you're paying the price of this full survey. They're not giving it to you. And just kind of helping. I just can't help myself. It was like helping them put stuff in place. And that ended up building the trust to where, in the next round, we actually ended up taking over the entire program. And we ended up partnering to where I built them a whole development team. So that way we were from site acquisition all the way through to the end. And it was a great 10-year run. It did at the end of our last year. Just funding has been hard. And I've worked with several different hydrogen startups with Bloom Energy and fuel cells with the Home Depots and other things. And there's just not a lot of funding in clean energy right now. So, but it was a very good run and experience with those guys.
Yeah, it's a wide open field. It feels like there's so many visions and so many people trying to capitalize and make theirs work that it's hard to get scale. I guess, right? I mean, it hydrogen
is so early in the technology. It's like hydrogen will not be for light duty cars. I mean, for semis, For boats, for planes, it's lightweight, it's there. But for transit and how we get around, it's not it. So that wasn't the right model. We did start building heavy duty stations and build out the supply chain. So we built the first hydrogen hubs in Livermore and then also at East Bay Mud in Oakland. So that part is, but it's just so early in the cycle for the technology.
Yeah, same with electric, right? I mean, well, it's not all about, but it's complementing the vehicles they use, but also it's an infrastructure problem, just like you were working with to build that out and at least equal, if not replace the fuel, gasoline stations and things like that. But
yeah. So for example, there's 9,000 gas stations in California. There's 60 hydrogen stations.
yeah, so from a convenience standpoint, it's just not hard to compete there. Well, all right. So at some point, or is this kind of still what you're doing today, or have you even, fine tuned a little bit more?
Yeah. So I still have what I found through all of that and over the years was finding different lines because the consulting income creates the capital to then invest in our own deals. So still heavily have the consulting, have our own software that manages it. We also do the dry utility. So again, out west, getting power, gas, and telecom. So Chick-fil-A right now is remodeling 150 stores a year. And for each one, you have to upgrade the power and the gas and the telecom. So we're working with them. So I still work with the national tenants, but it was actually after Hurricane Ian in 2022 that my whole community in Fort Myers Beach, like 100% of the structures were significantly damaged. We're 3 years in and 3 years into a 10 to 15 year rebuild process. So it does feel a lot better, but it's a long ways out. And what that led me to just truly start thinking about and understand is that, like our old RV park sold almost immediately for $55 million. Like, oh, cool. So now we're going to have these giant towers here and we're just north of Naples. So we're going to be Naples Junior. Okay. But, the fact was before the hurricane, we were an average middle-class island. As crazy as that is to say, we were. And most of the locals cannot rebuild and come back. So what we're trying to do, and I actually just interviewed one of the business owners who did have a business that got completely destroyed. And, they should be able to open or at least do a soft opening 3 years later. But part of why they rebuilt was to keep that local pride. I mean, she had been coming here since she was a kid and her family had been coming since like the 50s or 60s. So it's empowering our locals to be the ones who are doing the redevelopment. And like we talked about from the beginning, we don't even think about it. So that's how gate kept the industry is. We don't even think that it's possible for us. So we just don't even think about it at all. So that's where my passion was. It was, if I never got paid to do something like anything again, what would I still get out of bed for that still had me excited every morning? And that's where I realized I'm like, it would be to help others get in the game to do that local project, to do an adaptive reuse on that building they keep driving by, because we don't need just one or two people to own our whole towns. Like, we can be the ones who own the buildings that then we operate the businesses out of. And then as locals, we come and support the businesses. And then we create the tax dollars that stay in the community. So the city's updating our utilities and our roads and our parks. And now it doesn't matter if you're red or blue or what you are, because now this is a community and we all chose to live here. So we have that common bond, and you're creating these thriving, self-sustaining communities. So, yep. So I've created local real estate developers to try and do whatever it takes to remove the gatekeeping and take my almost 20 years of experience and go, here is the roadmap. Here's the blueprint. Go do it.
Nice. Mm-hmm. I think we missed a part where you coast to coasted from California back to Florida. What was it that pulled you back to Fort Myers? Was it just personal interest, or was there a business pull? Or
I'm a wandering nomad. So California, once I had started my company, I ended up moving up and buying in Lake Tahoe, because as an outsourced development project manager, there were some relationships I had with clients when I was their consultant that they almost were like trying to treat me like an employee. I'm like, no, I'm a consultant. Therefore, I don't work in your office. I don't come in. I will make sure your projects are very successful. I was in Lake Tahoe. And then when COVID happened in 2020, my dog had already made me buy a truck and a truck camper. So when I went snowboarding, she could come with me. Well, then COVID happens and the camper gets delivered. And even my public hearings in California were on Zoom. Like, wait, I could be anywhere in the country. This is amazing. So we took off and I actually toured the country. I went to all the Mountain West states and it dropped down. It was the first time. So being from Ohio, I never went to the Mitten State up north. I even went through the UP and dropped down Michigan and landed in Florida the first time. So that would have been the fall of 2020, and was actually trying to buy in the Keys, but that ended up falling through, which I'm grateful for now. The Keys are much slower pace of life, and I'm still young with too much energy. So I come back to Tahoe. So now we're in 21. And unfortunately, then the Caldor fire was coming, and it almost wiped out our whole South Shore. And like, I'd be walking my dog and you'd come back and you'd just be coughing so much. So I was like, hey, we have a truck and a truck camper. Like, let's road trip again. So pit stopping in the Midwest. And then I had some friends from Tahoe who ended up buying in Naples. So I flew down and realized, holy cow, from Fort Myers Beach to Naples is one of the most gorgeous drives that mimics what the Keys are, but you're close to civilization. Like, this is incredible. So I ended up buying in Fort Myers Beach with the intention of being a snowbird to Tahoe. So January to April, Tahoe, skiing, snowboarding. All the snowbirds from the Midwest come to Florida, rent my duplex out, house hack, and vice versa. When I'm not in Tahoe, then I rent that out. So, and I'm in my investing, I am such a house hacker. I'm like, why would I pay to live somewhere when someone else is paying for my properties and I get to live on the beach and in the mountains? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Great strategy.
It is. Yeah. We've been talking about that lately and trying to decide a next rental move. But yeah, that's great. Okay. So you got back to Fort Myers or you got to Fort Myers. And so now you're developing and cultivating your passion for the local community, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like in turn? You mentioned packaging up all your knowledge and providing it to the local community. Is that through consultations, or I know you mentioned you had a software, your own internal design software platform, or kind of how does that all translate out into the community?
Yeah. So I started by building a blueprint course, which is free, and I just give it away. And that's just the roadmap. It's a 4 to 6 hour course. That's the roadmap that says, here's what development is, here's the process. And that way people can go from curious to, oh, okay, I would actually like to learn more, or, okay, that's cool, and nope, not for me.
And it is actionable for any size place? Is it kind of small town geared, midtown?
And it's the same process regardless.
Process steps of check zoning.
Exactly. It takes you from start to finish to, okay, get clear on what you want to do. And I'm just a big fan of, you live in your community. You know what's missing. You know the places you want to live, work, and play. You know the old building you keep driving by. You know the lot. Why go to another town and try and figure all of that out and guess when you know what needs built here? And you just need the playbook to go, okay, here's how I do it. So once you do that.
It starts post idea, or it's not about, checking with the city council or looking at demographics and trying to determine, like, we live in a small town. I don't know. We probably have 3,000 people in our town. It's not a big town. Yeah. We drive through and we see a laundromat and we see 4 grocery stores. And I'm always like, how can 4 grocery stores survive in this town?
Right.
But, there's a lot of commuter pass through traffic and different things. There's more coffee shops than I can imagine can survive, but who knows? I don't know. But anyway, your process is a little bit beyond that. And so, okay, we come up with an idea and we say, our town needs a roller skating rink. And then it's about how to kind of go from.
Yeah, I mean, it would be proving, but it's then proving that out and going, okay, well, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to the city and say, okay, where's the zoning going to work for us to put that? Talk to brokers to see, who might be willing to sell their land. A lot of times, especially in a community of 3,000 people, you can get seller financing. And then also, the more that you talk about what you want to do and bring, then the more people are just randomly going to come out of the woodwork and be like, oh, I want to support your project in whatever way. It's like, for example, Craig is one of the guys in our program. He's a contractor, does tons of California work, but there's small town Idaho that he wants to build and develop in. Well, he was back visiting, and he splits the time between both places. He was back visiting and getting a sandwich at the shop, and the person there was like, oh, I know you invest in real estate. This deal fell apart across town. And it was 19 lots where a developer was trying to build some kind of housing and it fell through. And he's like, yeah, I'll talk to him. I'll give him a call later. Well, he doesn't get home before that person called the broker, who then calls him, because that's how small towns work, and said, oh, I heard you're interested. Let's talk more. And he was like, okay, yeah, yeah. And they start talking. So then he has drinking night beers with the guys the next night, and they're all talking. There's a person at the table next door that overhears them talking. He's like, hey, give me your number. I'm going to call you tomorrow. I've got a couple different guys that would be willing to invest in projects like this, and I'll connect you with them. He literally was getting a sandwich and having beers. And now he has a project and potential equity partners. So it's the more you just talk about it and let people know that you're doing something, the more it helps. And like Lynn and Jason up in the UP, he grew up there. She went to college there. They went out west and then realized, there's an opportunity to come back home. And so their goal was, how do we redevelop our town? And I think Hancock, again, 3,000 people. And they had an old building that in 2019 was bought. The owner was trying to renovate it back into a restaurant bar, and it's been vacant for like 4 years. And they said, man, we want to do something with this. Well, they owned Fresh Coast Cabins, their a micro resort that they had redeveloped during COVID, and they had put a sauna in there. And they're like, you know what? What if we take this land and we do it in phases? There's a little bit of land here. Let's drop in a couple saunas and cold plunges, because it's very much the Finnish tradition history up there. And then phase 2 was them converting the first floor into a brewery and gathering spot. And then phase 3 is almost done. But the amount that they got an investor who just believed in them as because they had watched the other projects they had done. And so he came and helped invest in the sauna part. As they were doing that, another local said, hey, I'd be willing to invest if you do the work into this part of it, if you need more capital partners. And because they were sharing their story and telling everyone out there, not only did the city put in, I think they're actually right now installing floating docks, so that way you can have water access in the summer, and they're beefing up the park next door. But the whole community, the minute, like I was there when they weren't even open yet, and there were snowmobilers coming by like, hey, can we come in and have a drink? Can we hang out? So if you take the places where like people just want to gather, I'm reading a book right now. We've got our places where we sleep and we work, but what we're really missing in our communities are those third places, those places where we hang and we gather and everyone's on the same level. There's no expectation or hierarchy. It's just we come through in passing. We're all just enjoying and talking to each other, and we're in community, being social, not isolating ourselves. So yeah, so. You're local, your community, you know what's there. Talk to the people, share your ideas, and you'd be surprised what kind of shakes out.
Yeah, the informal network I think is super powerful. We've experienced it here. Our neighbors have moved that are next to us, but the initial neighbors when we moved in were realtors and part of the local community, and they knew everything that was going on. Through our podcast, we reached out to a real estate developer, more in the residential mobile home parks and tiny home communities. And turns out he lives a mile away from us. And he was like, oh, well, I'll just come do the podcast from your home. Or, so we had him over. He's, a big dog in town and kind of does stuff like that. But yeah, definitely that network, you hear if your ears to the ground, and if you speak, the spoken word is very powerful, but yeah, you put things out there and things tend to happen, especially like you said, in a small town. Aside from the informal network, who are kind of the go-to organizations like Chamber of Commerce, get to know the city council, or what other things should people plug into?
Yeah, we say that there's the 5 strategic partners, and that's going to be your broker, your lender, which should be a regional bank if you're looking at development, just because the big banks, they're not user-friendly. They don't know the market. You're not going to get the best terms. Whereas the regional banks see both the businesses who are getting business loans and lines of credit, but also they see the projects that are happening that they're funding loans on. So they're a great source of information and can help fund your deal. But then also your architects, engineers, and contractors. And the key is all of those people need a developer to even have a job. They are more than willing to have a conversation with you, because the contractor can't build something that doesn't exist. The architect can't, and engineer can't design it. And the brokers can't make their commissions and find you tenants if you haven't built it. So all of those work together. And through that, like you said, with the broker, like their networks are large. So just by building those relationships before you need them, that's going to create opportunities. And maybe it's, hey, I know you're strong at this, and I'm also working with this person. You guys might want to partner together, or at least have a conversation. And you'll have other people that are on your team, but that core 5 would be it. From the city side, especially in the smaller towns, your city managers are really approachable. And same with your planning commissioners and city council. It's your neighbors.
Yeah.
That's what makes up these anyway. So potentially go into a hearing if you don't want to spend the time at a couple meetings just to hear what's going on. Read the meeting minutes or go through some of the recordings and just kind of see, what's the pulse of the community? What are they talking about? What are they saying? Oh, we have a missing middle. We would love if people would build townhomes. Great. Now I know what to do with that lot right there. Or,
Yeah.
hey, one key thing is that the cities own land and they are sometimes willing to just give it away if you're going to build what they need built there.
Yeah.
It's like,
Tax
again,
producing, income
yeah,
generating businesses or
yeah.
residences and things like that. Yeah.
So whether they buy blighted homes that they can then help reduce and mitigate the risk for people to rebuild, or again, up in Hancock, the city manager in the city ended up buying the old hardware store that wasn't there anymore, and they were in the process of securing grants so they can demolish it, remediate it, and get any contamination out. And they are literally willing to give it to a developer who can find a way to build mixed use that pencils. Unfortunately, it wasn't penciling yet, but with commercial on the bottom and some housing above. So they got a combination of business spaces and housing. So all those local conversations, and the chamber is a big one. I'm a member of the chamber everywhere I live. So in Tahoe, I'm in the CEO chamber group, and in Fort Myers Beach, I'm part of the chamber. So it's networking, it's putting yourself out there, and it's 100% worth it because you never know what conversation is going to lead to something that opens the door to a cool project.
Yeah. Love that. So, all right, let's kind of circle back to Fort Myers here. It sounds like you're working with many local community members and a lot of, I don't know if I want to say tragedy, but definitely some, natural disasters happen
Yeah.
there. That's got to be such a hard thing. How is that going in terms of local people motivation versus are you feeling pressure from corporate or national, that are wanting to be opportunistic, maybe even, and come in and find certain things, or how's that balance working out in order to do the rebuild project, which, like you said, is maybe a 10 to 15 year vision?
Mm-hmm. I would say it's probably 75-25, and hopefully I'm off on the 25% being the local rebuild. But we had a lot of large developers in the Southwest Florida area come in and go, great. And our local owners, I mean, it's to give perspective, when a natural disaster happens and your community is impacted, people say, oh, well, you have insurance, like you're fine. The reality of it is it's months before you even get the trash off the street, if not years. And when I say trash, I mean you're literally moving pieces of your house and your porch and your docks and someone's shed next door and the car that's still stuck in your yard. So before you can even start doing anything, you're working on that while working with FEMA, who anytime, like, I'm sorry, I work with government all the time. It is not efficient. It is not effective. It is not easy to deal with. So you then have multiple layers because someone has to pay for the cost of removing all the debris. And we had tons of people go, oh, it's a conspiracy. We can't get rid of our trash. Dumps aren't taking our stuff if they were trying to privately haul it. Well, the reason dumps weren't taking it is, one, it was contaminated, and two, the federal government is going to pay for that, not your city. So they don't want to spend the money to accept it because then they have to pay to finish processing it. So there's so many layers. And then with insurance, it is not the end all be all. They fight you tooth and nail. There's so many people here who had to end up going into different lawsuits to get what they rightfully deserved and hiring public adjusters. It's the ugly side of how things actually go down. So by the time you get to that, you're 1-2 years into the process at that point. So for the locals, a lot of them, one, can't afford to rebuild because the outside money did come in and they were willing to buy the lots and they had the time to, like, they could drop $55 million and they won't make a dime on that for at least 10 years because they just now, 3 years later, got approved at one of the public hearings. They still have to go through the whole design and permitting process. And at that point, then they have probably a 4 to 5 year construction process to build what they're building. So locals are not going to have that capital thing. Sure, I'm going to park $55 million for 10 years. So,
No, or anything really. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Most people, unfortunately, are in a very short-term window of financial security. And so, it's exactly in things like that and that's kind of what led me into the question, was that, there's a lot of opportunism that comes out of catastrophe, unfortunately, because people can't wait it out. They can't, they need income. They got to go get another job. And that job is not going to be where the disaster was. It's going to be,
Yeah.
they're going to have to move and relocate or do something. And if somebody's willing to take their property for pennies on the dollar, then sometimes it's the only out that people have. And that's like you said, that is the ugly side. And for sure, yeah, I mean, my dad's a public adjuster.
Then
He tells me
Yep.
every time I talk to him, he's got a different story about, fighting insurance companies and all of that. So yeah, I mean, and they're in a business, right? They don't necessarily want to just throw money out everywhere. I mean, but at the same time, feel like they're going really extreme the other way. But yeah, those are
Right.
difficult things to manage
Yeah.
through.
So I would say probably 25% though are the locals who were able to take an existing structure. There's a couple who were able to completely rebuild. But for the locals who were able to stay, it was taking an existing commercial building and being able to just rehab it and bring it back to life. And that's something where it's a lower cost that they could do, and then they can immediately start generating income. And so pretty much the rule of thumb is if you can just even break even, and this is whether it's a town like mine that was destroyed or in our smaller communities, if you can get to break even and you can play the longer game and you're not trying to get for cash flow right away, you can get to the point where you're building that long-term wealth and through equity. And maybe you're the first person to turn a couple of your properties, but now you've created that ripple effect. And now more people are going, oh, well, if you guys can do it, maybe I can do this one, and maybe I can do this one. And by everyone doing that and reinvesting in the community, you're setting yourselves up for overall success while enjoying the places and having deeper connections and relationships within your community. So especially in small towns, I'm real with people, and it's, you're not going to develop something and then sell it like we do in the primary markets, because when you sell it, you're selling it for the cost you just spent all that time for. So there is some level of you might be ground leasing to the tenants and they pay rent, but there is going to be some level of breaking even or making a little bit of cash flow, but you're not retiring off of that. But in the long run, it will be. You get 5-10 years down the line, and now you've got something that not only was a community benefit, but that's the real money there.
Yeah. Did you have something?
No, not at this moment. But
So just thinking about kind of the fact that like I said, we live in a small town. It's hasn't gone through a disaster in any way. We're maybe 30 minutes outside of Colorado Springs, so larger city. There's definitely a lot of land to the west of us in between here and the next little small town. But like, do you see commonalities in tertiary markets or so of what the opportunities are? And obviously that depends a lot on the demographic, like is something growing, stagnant, or retreating. But I'm just kind of, like I said here, there's a bunch of restaurants, there's a lot of coffee shops, a few grocery stores. Are there projects that tend to take hold and either go faster or are more fruitful, or is it just so unique for each market?
The projects that make the most sense and that are the most successful are the ones that tie into your heritage in some way or have that local feel or vibe. So whatever your community is known for. Like my small town always had the Fredericktown Tomato Show, and we always had different and with bathtub races and everything. So like if you did something with a play on that to some extent, is like, hey, this is a local spot. This is here. You can capture the tourists that drive through, but really thinking about and cultivating and creating something for the community to where you're not just having a drink, you're not just eating food, you're not just having coffee. But if you create that space and now it's a destination, now it's somewhere where it's enjoyable and a hangout, and it's, hey, every Tuesday night we go here and there's this, that, or the other, to where you're really creating that experience. That's what I've seen work the best. So it's more so honestly those third spaces, which then create the opportunity to go, hey, well, now we could build this, I don't know, some kind of housing project here, or we could build this space for commercial. One thing that's interesting that we were just talking to someone in St. Pete, Florida about is he was in the restaurant business and he was somewhere in Colorado. I think it was in Breckenridge. And so he was helping businesses start and open their restaurants. And he comes back to St. Pete, Florida, and he realizes that in the zoning code, these older single family houses that he can buy for 10, 20 grand, he could actually retrofit them and turn them into restaurants. Mm-hmm. And because he understood the layout of how restaurants and things could work, he could take the heavy lift off the operator by designing it and doing the tenant improvement build out up front. And then he could put an operator in and put a chef in. And he actually put the chef in the first one, but now he has operators for the others. But now you're creating an opportunity for someone to start a business that wanted to, but didn't want to do the development side.
Mhm.
And think about how many aging older buildings we have that could potentially work for scenarios like that. Instead of anytime you can take an existing building and do some kind of adaptive reuse project and repurpose it, that's where the true goal is, to keep your capital down, but to leverage your existing infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a win-win. You're repurposing something that maybe was declining in use. And yeah, to that specific example, sometimes are the most fun restaurants to go to where they're
Yeah.
really
I
cozy.
went to his, so I was up there when I had heard about it, and then I had him on the pod because he put a Japanese concept in, and I had just been to Japan like 8 months earlier. It's like, oh yes, I would love good Japanese food. This would be amazing. And just the vibe and the energy inside, and maybe there were 8 tables, and then there was a patio outside for once the sun got down and it wasn't so hot. And it was the cutest, most awesome experience. I don't think about many meals and restaurants that I go out to eat at, but I still have vivid memories in my head from that place. So
Right.
That's great. Pivoting a little bit to your podcast, I'm really curious about the real estate pessimist, podcast. Obviously, you have a very vast and complex experience with real estate investing, and I was wondering what sparked the interest to start this kind of podcast.
Yeah.
And was it a bad experience that you had? Was it a desire to let people also know the ugly side of the real estate investing and what
Yeah.
could happen? And curious about that.
Yeah, so it started because I met my co-host Eric in a different real estate group that we were in. It was a Better Life Tribe when Brandon Turner first started it, and we were all in that for a reason. We were like, we're seasoned in real estate, we know that, but we want the whole picture. We want what all of that is, and it was so refreshing because today, if you go into things like Bigger Pockets and someone posts something, you're probably going to get attacked and told you're dumb, and like it's not the most pleasant comments. But in BLT, someone would ask a question and we would thoughtfully respond. And instead of saying, you're dumb, it would be, hey, and maybe we'd consider it from this angle. It's not a bad move, but maybe do a little more research. And so it was just nice to hear that kind of vibe and approach. And then Eric and I just started talking. We're like, yeah, we're both black sheep. We totally get it. And we just have so many stories and so much experience. And we know from listening, I'm a serial podcast listener, constant learner. I learn from hearing everyone's stories and their different angles and approaches, and then going, oh, I want to try that one. Like, that's cool. I really like that. And he had podcast experience. So it was like one day, it was actually on Instagram, and he had commented on someone's post. I had commented on something back, and I'm like, so yeah, we're going to start a podcast. And it started from there. And then we had a conversation, and he came up with it. He's like, how about the real estate pessimist? Because everyone puts the highlight reels out there, but we all know it's like there's so much more to real estate than, oh yeah, I was successful. Like, do you want to know how I got all the wrinkles and gray hairs? Like, that's the real story. And I had always been interested in, between all the experiences I've had in commercial and my own residential and tenants and short-term rentals, it is very interesting. And I felt like I was like, I should write a book someday, and I just don't like writing. But I'm like, oh, we could talk about it. We ended up creating it from that with the tagline of, and we're not pessimists. We are so addicted to real estate. It's crazy. But we want to tell the good, the bad, and the truth about what actually happened. So that way, if you're neck deep in a project and you're just like, I must be doing something wrong because everyone else out there is winning, and that it's just not the case. So it's pulling back the curtain and going, hey, here's what actually happened. And yeah, they could have won possibly at the end. They might have had this great, fantastic victory. And I have tons of those stories. But I didn't know halfway through that it was going to be fantastic. Do you want to know how much I was sweating bullets thinking that I had just completely messed everything up, and that I had like questioning everything about my 15, 20 years of experience? Like, so it's just being real, authentic. Like, I'm tired of all the BS and that out there. So we started that pod, and then that made me realize, ooh, I really enjoy podcasts. So I ended up starting the local real estate developer podcast with another friend a couple months later. So I have both of those. And the whole point is just to one, make you not feel like you're alone. But two, with the local developer one, is to just help people hear those stories, because we know how to house hack, we know how to burr, we know how to like even, land flipping and different things are getting out there, multifamily syndications, all of that, the buzz, but we're really talking about development. So I'm thoroughly just enjoying talking to the locals who are doing it and hearing their stories. And I've already had people reach out, go, oh my gosh, like I had some light bulbs click when you were talking to Craig about this, or you were talking to, Rachel about that. So clearly, as you guys know, you don't get paid to podcast, but it is very fun and very enjoyable. And who knows where it takes me, but it's fun right now.
Yeah, it's a great form of networking as well.
Awesome.
Just getting out there, meeting people and hearing stories and having light bulb moments. Honestly, we get inspired. For us, this podcast, we're at about 2 years now, but the
Nice.
genesis of it was very similar to yours on the Pessimist show. Like, we were talking about a podcast focused on real estate, business, cash flows, and investing. But there's so many out there, and exactly to your point, they're like a glossy marketing deck most of the times,
Yeah.
right? Well, I mean, it's hard to go talk about your misses for a lot of people. And we thought of the Fight Club, which we don't do a lot of Fight Club matchups anymore. They're really hard to organize. But the thought was, okay, if we get two people together in a debate style format, then you can kind of pick apart and go, oh yeah, but what about this? Or, what about the tax implications? Or people can challenge that thing. We've only had a few where the guests really went at it. A lot of times people are like, overly respectful, not really
right. Like, no, you were supposed to be fighting. Not going, oh, I could see your point. Okay, I could do that.
Anyway,
Come on, we give you a platform to fight. Just fight.
but there are so many stories out there. I mean, we had dinner last week with a social media connection that happened to be passing through town, and so we went and had dinner with them. And once you sit down at the dinner table and you start opening up, well, they have exactly the same stories we do. Oh my God, we were in a deal and it went south and we lost all our money and whatever. And I did too, but nobody's posting about that on social media.
Hey guys, I just lost.
I just lost $250,000. How about you?
This is really we all want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about that too, and like I was thinking about how I was after the hurricane, or how you are when you take a massive L. You are not I don't even want to pick up my phone when something like terrible happens, let alone like I don't want to respond to text messages, let alone put a post up. So I think you're also just mentally not in that space too. But I think it's super helpful when you get out of it, you start to see the silver linings and the lessons learned, and you do your own postmortem and go, oh. So to me, it's just how can we share our stories to just help someone skip that next time, and maybe, reach a hand back and help someone and know that they're going to well exceed where we were at, because they get to skip all our learning curves. Like, the world's abundant. Like, this isn't a competition. Like, we can help everyone win.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're kind of all about that philosophy as well. Well, let's wrap things up a little bit. So we mentioned the podcast, and you have a couple there. Where else can people get in touch with you? And maybe even before that, for people that are interested in exploring development opportunities, what's the best way for them to get started? I know you kind of teased earlier a blueprint that you have there, and how can people get their hands on that? And if they want to learn more, get in touch with you.
Yeah, we try to make it super simple. If you go to localrealestatedeveloper.com, you'll have the podcast, so you can see the podcast where we have our guests. I've also been having a lot of fun doing these mini-sodes where I'll talk to someone about their project that's midstream. And so we'll do a deeper dive on the nuances, and then I'll do some voiceover explaining, oh, you've heard that, but here's the importance of what you heard. And then also, like, we have our programs, but I'm all about, let's put as much free stuff out as possible, because the goal is to remove the gatekeeping. So we do have our blueprint course. That's the one that's totally free. And then for people who are ready and like, okay, what's next? Then I do have a more detailed accelerator course. And I had said the software. So my software is so robust for doing complex California deals. What I'm working on is creating some kind of template that people can use. So you have your deals, you're using Monday or Basecamp or Asana. I use Rike just because it's more complex for what I do, but I'm trying to create a template, so then that way it'll be included in there, and you could just upload that to your project management software and go, okay, here's the steps of development along with the courses. So it's more actionable, because the biggest thing is getting people to take action. So it's how do I remove more and more barriers? So I'm constantly trying to figure out what that could be. And then for people who are actively doing their deals, that's where, depending on if it's full-blown consulting, do it for them, or if it's, hey, I want to do my deal and I just need a mentor, then they get the full software we incorporated in the courses, me and we're working through their active projects at that time. So yeah, bunch of different layers, but localrealestatedeveloper.com. And then also for our podcast, what we're doing is our guests that have it, they're sharing resources of, hey, here's a tool I use for my type of development. So there's a whole about like literally just trying to empower you. Go take action, go change your community.
Yeah, I love that. And just to bring it full circle, I think at the beginning you were mentioning, this desire we have. And I'm a believer that as we get deeper into Zoom calls, distance work, and even AI, there's going to be more need for stronger, elements of that within our community where people can go and gather and meet and interact with one another and
Not on a screen.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think there will be
Sure.
a strong desire for that human to human connection. Or it could just all be over. I don't know.
And then it's just over. So,
Right.
okay.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Agreed. I'm all about like right now, like it is relationships, connection, and collaboration because that's what AI can't take away from us. And it's just, hey, like let's be more human. That we can automate and systematize a lot of things. You can't do that with humanity.
Yeah. Then there's just more time to be human with
Yeah.
one another. So hopefully that's the silver lining in all of this.
Yeah, we can go play more pickleball or beach volleyball.
Or beach volleyball. Right on. Well, Kristi, this has been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story and your insights. And yeah, I do encourage more and more community aspect of things. I think we have a little bit of a yearning to plug into our community here and do something impactful. It's just a matter of picking a lane and like you said, getting started. You also teased earlier about this willingness to fail, or at least not see it as such a thing. I know one of Lydia's big role models, if you will, is Sarah Blakely, and she has some great stories about growing up in an environment that almost encouraged trying and missing and failing and celebrating just the attempt. And so I think there's a lot of beauty in that. So even though there can be big financial risks sometimes if you get into these projects, but good stuff.
And you know what? You can still pick yourself up and you can still get back at it.
That's
So at
generally
least
the
you
case.
got off the sideline.
Yeah, for 95% of us, that's definitely the case.
And
So,
what if we succeed? What
Yeah,
if?
what
and
if?
then you would have never known unless you try.
Yep.
totally.
Love that. Love that.
Thanks for coming on the show. Yeah, we'll put in the show notes resources you mentioned. So anybody that wants to jump off and check things out can certainly go do that. And wish you all the best in the second half of the year here.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks. And you too. And you
All
guys get a deal or get curious about something, don't hesitate to reach out.
You'll be the first one.
I'm all
we,
about
look
like
up for.
pushing you forward, giving you the stuff to just go do it.
Such a pleasure, Kristi.
Yes.
Right on.
Thank you.
For those of you joining us today, we hope you enjoyed this time in the Champions Corner as much as we did. Got some awesome takeaways, and most importantly, will take action to continue living your best life and maximizing your potential. Mindset is such an important aspect of life, and when coupled with action, delivers undeniably powerful results.
Please subscribe to the podcast to hear from more great guests and get the latest mindset mastery insights and cash flow matchups.
Again, thank you so much for investing your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast.